So just take me from that first moment that you decided you were going to become a Muslim to how your mindset changed to you committing crime. What happened?
I guess for everyone it's different, but for me it was when I first became Muslim, I'd say the first 6 months to a year was just normal, going to the mosque and, you know what I'm saying, praying and fasting and whatnot. But then after a little while, you know, getting more involved into like activism and stuff and propagating Islam and speaking about Islam in public, to then moving on to more controversial things such as the Muslim Patrol and confronting people. I guess where my beliefs became more sort of, I have to physically implement my religion rather than practice it personally on a spiritual level to sort of propagate it and implement it on other individuals. That's when it became more of going out and stopping people drinking and stopping people holding hands and being outside the mosque dressed in certain ways. That's when it became more of, like you said, the crime aspect.
So that process, how did you get to that point? Obviously, it sounds like it was gradual.
Yeah, I guess it was in terms of the end process, sort of to the fact of committing crime, to the bit at the beginning of just praying. But there was always the belief after, as it started sort of processing, my belief become stronger, and then I sort of become more, like I'd say, convicted in what I was doing was correct and was according to Islam. So when that belief sort of, I was certain that was correct, and I guess through sort of the internet, lectures online, reading certain books and learning from certain individuals, all of that collectively, the way it affected me was convinced me to sort of go out in public and do these things as a propagation of my faith.
So the internet played a part for you?
Yeah, of course, because, you know, I would search certain lectures online and look at certain people's videos online and, you know, notorious individuals, Anwar al-Awlaki. I would listen to a lot of his lectures, and I guess it started off by listening to the life of the Prophet, the life of Abu Bakr, the companions, you know, then the Hereafter series, Paradise and all of this. Then moving on to more political issues like foreign policy, you know, Islam, jihad, you know, all of this stuff. Then that's when it sort of, I took them lectures, which were very specific, and I made it generalized, and I sort of implemented that understanding that I had on a wider society.
And what were you thinking at the time? Did you see yourself as an extremist, as this labelled extremist, or was there not the recognition?
No, because I guess somebody who makes a mistake never recognise they make a mistake until they actually analyse what they've done after they've done it. So at that time, especially I had people around me convincing me as well and sort of certifying that what I was doing was correct. That's what sort of gave me the conviction that what I'm doing is definitely Islamic, it's definitely according to the religion, it's definitely a propagation of my faith.
How do you perceive now what you did? How do you feel about it?
Well, obviously I've got mixed emotions about what I did because, you know, I guess in essence protesting is not something which is you know, forbidden in law, but when it breaks out into sort of violence and all of that stuff, that's when it becomes more, you know, controversial and opposing the majority of society's beliefs. But I guess my actions definitely in the Muslim Patrol was something that even within Islam says is incorrect. So you don't even need to look, as a Muslim, I don't need to look outside my own community to understand that my actions were something which were forbidden.
And do you agree then that they're wrong, and if you like, you've repented of that? Do you feel that you have?
Yeah, of course, because I guess personally repentance is between me and God, to say that I have to recognise myself and ask forgiveness on a spiritual level, but obviously from the outside of the society to say, look, I apologise to the individuals that I did harass and attack and all of these people there, obviously that's more of an environment around me to apologise to them. But definitely I always think about, even on a day-to-day basis, if I was to search myself online, you could see the type of things that come up, and it's not something that now I've moved away from that and I've studied my faith correctly, that I understand these type of actions are completely incorrect.
Do you feel ashamed of what you did?
Of course, because I guess as a Muslim, my appearance would represent Islam. So when people see that, they connect my actions to the religion, which now I understand to be incompletely correct. And I guess it's caused, my actions itself has caused a lot of Islamophobia, a lot of backlash in terms of the Christian Patrol and Britain First and the EDO, and all these actions there are directly from what I've done to the people and the individuals at large. So I guess you can say that definitely it's something that's always on my conscience. And even though you could say, even if those individuals did forgive me and forgive what I've done on the Muslim Patrol and Edgware Road, I would still feel inside myself something that I've caused other Muslims harm, and my actions at large have caused a lot of Islamophobia.
Tell me, when you first had contact with Usman and your first impression, were you sceptical over what he was doing?
I first met Usman through the probation service upon my release from prison, and I was very sceptical when meeting him, because obviously the same people that had imprisoned me, which is obviously the justice system, and then I'm working with the probation service, are now introducing me to this person. So my first impression to him as a Muslim was somebody who was definitely spying on me, or he wanted to gather information from me. He's somebody who wanted to, you know, get information out of me to pass on to the police service and the probation service. So I was very sceptical as someone who was a spy or somebody who was trying to infiltrate the Muslim community, and that was my first impressions of him.
And how did that change? How did that develop over how long?
I guess when you meet anyone, the only way that can change your perception of them is when you meet them personally. You sit down with them. Like I met his children, you know, I met his wife, you know, I met the people around him, his friends, you know, his family, his teacher, all of these people, you know, that I'd learnt about and I had started to take my religion from, convinced me that this individual cannot be a spy as well as a practicing Muslim. They're two things that contradict each other. So I said to myself, definitely this person wants to help the Muslim community, but he's using the, I guess you can say, the things that he has at his disposal, meaning the probation service, to help the Muslim community and also to help society at large as well.
So in terms of mindset, Usman in the Unity Initiative, they talk about linguistics and that oral tradition of Islam. Just take me through how that teaching, that perception you came to, how that changed for you.
What you've just explained, that's a traditional teaching of Islam. So, like you said, the oral tradition is how we learn our religion, and documenting it down is how we learn Islam. So when he approached me with these teachings, all I had to do was basic research to understand that yes, Islam is taught like this, and the majority of Muslims don't believe what I did was correct. So that, like I said earlier, that I had to judge myself and question myself and say to myself, you know, is what I'm doing correct? And it did happen that I did go back to prison for a case that was backtracked a year before that, and then that's when that time in prison I really had time to think and reflect, and I was meeting Usman on legal visits, you know, once a week, and was speaking. So all of that, you know, I'd say combined made me start to understand. And it was a slow process. It wasn't I met him on Monday and by Friday I was working with him, you know. It wasn't like that. It was over the year I spent in prison, my second time, made me sort of understand, and meeting the imams in prison and going to Islamic class and speaking to other Muslims, that I sort of start to understand the wider aspect of my religion, not just what I had taken for myself, picking, choosing the religion and sort of bringing it together and acting upon that. I started to understand from a wider aspect that this was incorrect, and what they was doing was actually, in fact, more Islamic than any of my actions I had done before.
So how would you summarise how your perceptions changed? What was it and what is it now? Well,
I guess you could say clash of society. You know, like, for instance, the us and them thinking that every non-Muslim is my enemy, and that Islam is at loggerheads with society at large, and Islam is not compatible with the society which we live in, so we have to oppose it and we have to stand against it. This ideology that I was taught before, and the ideology that I understand now, that Islam was compatible when the Prophet, he first received his revelation. He was working with the non-Muslims in that society, and he was teaching them about Islam, but in a way that was correct, not just attacking people because they don't agree with what you believe in.
So when you were part of the Muslim Patrol, you had this view that you wanted Sharia law to be imposed in Britain. That's changed, has it?
Of course, because the main aspect of that belief is that I haven't got the authority to do so. So me going around attacking non-Muslims that have nothing to do with the, say, you would say, society at large, like somebody drinking alcohol has nothing to do with the law implementing to say that alcohol is fine. So at that time I was to say that I used to believe that, and I still do as a Muslim. I disagree with these aspects, sort of, I don't drink and I don't smoke and I'm a married man. So all of these beliefs, I have these principles as a Muslim, but do I have to implement them on others? This is something that it took me a little while to learn, and I had to look into it deeply, but it's something which now I understand is the correct belief is not that you don't have to implement it on other people and force it upon them.